I had mashed potatoes on my shirt and my dignity on the floor. That's the first image burned into my brain when I replay Thanksgiving Day in my head. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't even saying anything at all. I was holding a bowl of green bean casserole, trying to pass it across the table, when my wife's hand came out of nowhere and slapped me so hard my ears popped. No warning, no build-up, no argument, just crack. And the sound was unreal, like someone snapped a celery stick through a megaphone. It was so quiet afterward, you could hear my dad chewing. He didn't even stop eating. My cousin Russ chuckled. I think he thought it was a bit. And I just stood there with casserole dripping down my arm, blinking like a malfunctioning robot, waiting for someone, anyone, to ask what the hell that was. No one did. Not even her. She sat down, dabbed her mouth with a napkin, and said, "Can someone pass the butter?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table, throw my plate, collapse on the floor like one of those fainting goats on YouTube. Instead, I sat down. And I ate. I ate dinner with the woman who slapped me in front of my family like I was a fly she'd swatted off her cheek. I ate next to my mother, who had the nerve to ask if I was feeling a little sensitive lately. I ate across from my brother, who mouthed, "You okay?" but didn't wait for an answer. You know that feeling when you're watching yourself from the outside? Like you're not in your body, you're just hovering above, watching someone else live your life poorly? That was me. The turkey was dry. The wine was cheap. The pie was still frozen in the middle. And I couldn't taste a damn thing. But here's the part no one knows. Not yet. That slap? It wasn't about the joke I made. It wasn't even about Thanksgiving. That slap was the final punctuation to a sentence she's been writing behind my back for months. And by the end of that week, I found out just how long she'd been writing it. The slap was still echoing in my skull the next morning. It wasn't just physical. It had burrowed into my thoughts, replaying itself every time I blinked. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I sat on the edge of the motel bed at 5:32 a.m., staring at the terrible wallpaper and trying to remember if I had always been this pathetic. The worst part wasn't that she hit me. The worst part was that I didn't even flinch. I let her do it. I didn't defend myself. I didn't ask why. I just sat back down like a trained dog waiting for the next command. Around 6:15, I drove back to the house. Not to talk to her. Not to apologize or demand one. I just needed socks. And maybe my charger. And maybe, if I'm honest, some kind of explanation. But when I pulled into the driveway, her car was gone. The house was empty. And that made me nervous. It wasn't like her to leave that early. Rieni doesn't do mornings unless a spa treatment or court summons is involved. But there was something else. Something off. The lights in the kitchen were still on. Her coffee mug was on the counter, half full. Her keys were missing, but her phone was sitting face down on the table. She never leaves her phone. I should have left then. Taken my socks, my charger, and gone. But instead, I found myself staring at the basement door. It was locked. For the first time in 9 years of living in that house, the basement door was locked. We don't keep anything valuable down there. It's where we dump old furniture, off-season clothes, and a Christmas tree that's missing a leg. We don't even have a working washer down there anymore. But now, after everything that had just happened, my wife, who slapped me in front of my entire family without flinching, had decided this was the moment to start locking doors. I grabbed the spare key from above the fridge. My hands were sweating. And don't ask me why, but my heart was racing like I was breaking into someone else's house. I unlocked the door slowly, creaking it open like a scene from a bad horror movie. The stairs groaned under my weight, and for a moment, I was sure the smell would be the worst part. Mildew, old cardboard, something metallic in the air. But it wasn't the smell that stopped me halfway down. It was the light. There was a light on. A soft, humming desk lamp glow, coming from the far back corner behind the water heater. That space had been empty for years, just concrete and pipes. But now, there was a folding table, a chair, a laptop, and a stack of photographs. I wasn't breathing. I know that sounds dramatic, but I swear to you, my body forgot how to breathe for a second. I walked over, each step sounding like a gunshot in the silence. The laptop was open. No password, just one window minimized. When I clicked it open, I felt my knees nearly give out. It was her email. Multiple drafts, all unsent, all addressed to someone named Ellis. And the subject line repeated again and again. He's starting to notice. I must have read that subject line a dozen times before I clicked on anything. He's starting to notice. Notice what? That she's angry? That she slapped me? That she's been pulling away for months? Or was it something worse, something that hadn't even hit me yet? I scrolled through the drafts. There were 6 of them, each one time-stamped in the early hours of the morning, like she'd written them when she thought I was asleep. One of them was dated 2 days before Thanksgiving. The others went back months. She had never sent them, just saved them, like breadcrumbs she didn't want anyone to follow, but couldn't quite bring herself to delete. The first one was short, just a few sentences. He asked again about the door in the basement. I told him it was for storage. I think he believed me this time, but it's getting harder to hide everything. I don't know how long I can keep this up. What door? Our basement didn't have more than one entrance. Or at least, I thought it didn't. The next few emails were longer, rambling. Rieni was always articulate in person, but these drafts felt like they'd been typed with shaking hands. She wrote about nightmares, about waking up at 2:34 every morning without fail, about sounds beneath the floorboards and scratching inside the walls. She said she tried to tell me once, but stopped when I laughed at a horror movie we were watching. Then came the weird part. Ellis's name started showing up in the body of the drafts. Not just in the to field. She was writing to him, about him. Not like a friend. Not like a brother. Like a handler. Ellis, the meds aren't helping. I still see things. I still hear him whisper when I close my eyes. And now Daryl's getting closer. If he finds the second room, it's over. He won't understand. You said he wouldn't remember, but I think he's starting to. I felt cold all over. Not scared, wrong. Like something inside me had shifted half an inch to the left. I tried to tell myself it was some creative writing thing, some therapeutic exercise. She'd always been private, always had journals. Maybe this was just her digital version of that. But my gut knew better. Rieni didn't write fiction. And I hadn't been sleepwalking in months, right? That's when I noticed the folder beside the laptop. A manila envelope, unsealed. Inside were more photos. At first glance, they looked like stills from a security camera. Grainy, black and white. But as I spread them across the table, I realized every single one was of me. Sleeping, brushing my teeth, leaving for work, eating cereal. Some were taken from inside the house. Some from outside, through windows I thought were always locked. There was one of me staring blankly at the living room wall with the TV off. I have no memory of that moment. None. Another of me at 3:14 a.m., sitting upright in bed, eyes wide open, not blinking. There was no camera in our room. At least, not that I knew of. And then, tucked behind the last photo, was a key. Small. Silver. No label. Just taped to the back of a note in Rieni's handwriting. Don't go into the second room if you want to stay sane. I dropped it. The key clattered to the ground like it weighed 10 pounds. There was no second room. Not officially. Not in the blueprints. I'd been in that basement 100 times, and it was just concrete and bad insulation. But now I wasn't sure of anything anymore. So I grabbed a flashlight, and I started tapping the walls. It took me exactly 31 minutes to find it. I timed myself, not because I was trying to be methodical, but because I needed structure. I needed numbers and steps, something real, to hold on to while the rest of my world was bending sideways. I tapped the walls with the handle of a hammer I found behind a box of old Halloween decorations. I didn't know what I was listening for, exactly, but I kept going. Concrete. Concrete. Stud. Concrete. Hollow. That's what stopped me. Hollow. It was behind the boiler. A place no normal person would ever bother to check unless they were actively trying to hide something. The drywall was cleaner there, almost too new. Not like the rest of the basement, which still smelled like damp socks and mildew. I ran my fingers along the edge and felt the tiniest draft. Cold. Not basement cold, outside cold. I found a seam, dug my nails into it, and pulled. It opened. There wasn't a door, just a panel, loosely attached with old hinges. When I yanked it back, it groaned like it hadn't been opened in years. My flashlight flickered. Of course it did. And I stared into a narrow corridor that absolutely should not have existed. It went back maybe 10 feet, barely wider than my shoulders. The walls were rough, unpainted. There were old scuff marks on the floor, like something had been dragged. Or someone. At the end of the corridor was a door. A real one. Metal. With a keypad. For a second, I thought I'd lost it. Like maybe this was a fever dream or a prank or some elaborate immersive art project Rieni was planning to reveal during our divorce proceedings. But then I remembered the key. The one from the envelope. I dug it out of my pocket and, Even though it didn't look like it belonged in any electronic system, I pressed it to the panel out of instinct. Click. The door opened. No code. No beep. Just click. Like the room had been waiting for me. Inside, the air was ice. Not cold, Arctic. My breath fogged in front of my face, and every instinct in my body told me to shut the door, turn around, and never ask another question in my life. But I stepped inside. There were no windows. No obvious light source. Just a soft, bluish glow coming from something in the center of the room. A monitor. Not a flat screen, but an old CRT with a curved screen, like something from the early 2000s. It was playing footage. Surveillance footage. Looped and grainy. And all of it was me. Again. Different angles. Different days. Some recent. Some, I swear, impossible. There was one clip of me in my childhood bedroom, age 11, building a Lego ship on the carpet. Another of me eating alone at a food court I haven't been to in over a decade. Another of me sitting in my car outside my office building, just staring forward. For 40 straight minutes. No music. No phone. Just sitting. Mouth slightly open. Eyes unfocused. I felt dizzy. I looked to the left. There was a second monitor, turned off. Beneath it, folders. Dozens. All labeled with names I didn't recognize. Case 14B, Elijah V. Case 20A, Morgan F. Case 3C, Daryl L. That's when I really lost my grip. I opened mine. Inside were printed transcripts of conversations I didn't remember having. Pages of dialogue, timestamps, footnotes. One labeled Subject Unaware. Behavioral Reset Successful. Another labeled Escalation Imminent. Induced Trigger. I stepped back. My vision was swimming now. My heartbeat was a drumbeat in my ears. I turned around and reached for the door, but it had closed. And there was no handle on the inside. Just me. And the loop. And the undeniable realization that whoever Ellis was, he'd been watching me a lot longer than I'd been watching back. The door behind me was sealed tight, smooth metal without a handle or latch. I pounded on it with my fists, then my shoulders, whispering anything that might make it budge. I even shouted, "Riini, help!" My voice bounced off the concrete walls, swallowed whole. Silence answered back. Minutes passed, or was it hours? Time folded into itself, like I was trapped inside one of those endless nightmare loops. Then I heard footsteps. Soft, careful, but unmistakable. The panel slid open. The bluish glow of the monitors spilled out, blinding me for a second. And then she stepped in. Riini, but not the woman I knew. Her eyes were wide, too wide, with a wild flicker of something I couldn't place. Panic? Guilt? Or something darker? Her face was pale, too pale, and the way she moved was jerky, like a puppet on tangled strings. She stared at me for a long moment, and I thought maybe she was about to scream or cry or run. Instead, she just whispered, "You shouldn't be here." I asked her why the basement was locked. Why the cameras? Why the emails? Why she hit me on Thanksgiving? She shook her head and sat on the cold floor, wrapping her arms around her knees. The room's glow flickered, and for a second, I could swear the shadows around her flickered too, like her shape was doubling, splitting. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I wanted to tell you. I swear I did. But Ellis said you couldn't know. Not yet." I wanted to ask who Ellis was, but before I could, the door slammed shut again, and the panel slid back into place. We were trapped. Riini's voice cracked. "Ellis controls everything. The house. The cameras. The me. I'm not always me anymore." "What the hell are you talking about?" I said, panic rising like bile in my throat. She took a shaky breath. "The truth is, we're not just people. Not like you think. We're subjects. Experiments. I was one of the first. Ellis runs the tests, observes, controls, erases memories. That basement. It's the control center." I laughed. Or tried to. It came out as a choking sob. "You're insane." She looked away, then back at me. "I want to believe I am. But you saw it. The footage. The transcripts. The reset triggers. You're part of it too. You're one of the cases. The reason I hid that key. I wanted to scream, run, punch something. Anything but hear this. But deep inside, a cold, hollow part of me felt the truth settling like ice. Ellis wasn't just some random name. Ellis was the reason my memories were breaking. Why Riini hit me. Why no one in my family noticed I wasn't really there sometimes. Why I couldn't explain the gaps, the shadows whispering at the edge of my mind. "We don't have much time," she said, voice barely a breath. "Ellis is coming. And when he does, none of this matters anymore." Outside the door, I heard a key turning. The lock clicked, slow and deliberate, and the door swung open. I half expected a shadowy figure in a lab coat, a cold voice explaining some grand conspiracy. Instead, a man stepped inside, a man who looked like he had just come from a coffee shop, wearing a rumpled jacket and sneakers, with tired eyes that didn't quite meet mine. "Daryl," he said softly, not with menace, but exhaustion. "I'm glad you found the room." I stared at him. He wasn't Ellis. Or maybe he was, but not the monster I pictured. His voice was calm, almost too calm, like he'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times and was tired of it. "Who are you?" I asked, the words thick with disbelief. He sighed, running a hand through thinning hair. "I'm the only Ellis there is. But you don't need to know me. You need to understand what you are." I shook my head, heart pounding. "I'm a husband, a son, a guy who just got slapped at Thanksgiving. I'm not whatever you're saying." He smiled sadly. "That's what we all think. But you're not. Not fully. You're part of something bigger. And yes, it sounds like a sci-fi nightmare. But these experiments, they're about identity, memory, control, the boundaries between reality and illusion." I wanted to laugh, but the room's chill squeezed my lungs. "So what? You watch me like a lab rat? Erase parts of me when you get bored?" That's the cold way to say it. But yes, you've been managed. Memories adjusted. Behaviors nudged. The slips you noticed, the gaps in your past, they were necessary. My head spun. "And Rieni? What's her role?" He looked toward the corner where she sat, eyes glazed but alert. "She's a subject like you. But she's become resistant. Which is why you found those drafts. She's been fighting the system." I clenched my fists, rage bubbling. "Then why slap me? Why pretend everything's normal?" Ellis's eyes darkened. "Because the cracks were showing. Because if you knew, if you fought back, the entire program could unravel." He stepped closer, voice dropping. "But you've been asking questions. That's dangerous." I swallowed hard, suddenly feeling very small. "What now?" Ellis gestured at the monitors, now showing distorted images of faces I didn't recognize. Other subjects, as he called them. "You can stay here, trapped, forever wondering what's real. Or you can come with me. See the world as it really is. Take control of your own mind." Rieni's voice broke the silence. "Don't trust him." Ellis looked at her, then back at me. "She's scared. I get that. But she's also right. This isn't easy." I glanced between them, feeling like a puppet on a fraying string. "I need time," I whispered. Ellis nodded, backing away. "You have less than you think. Time is a luxury we can't afford." The door hissed, closed behind him. Rieni's eyes met mine. "I'm sorry for everything." And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I believed her. I sat back against the cold wall, my mind racing faster than I could catch. Rieni was watching me, eyes wide but unreadable, like she was both pleading and warning at the same time. The room's faint blue glow wrapped around us, making the silence feel heavier than any words could. My hands trembled, not just from cold, but from the realization that nothing I knew about my life was certain anymore. "Why didn't you tell me?" I finally whispered, voice cracking under the weight of everything. "Why hide all this? Why let me be a prisoner in my own mind?" Rieni sighed, her breath shallow. "Because I was scared. And because Ellis, he controls more than just the cameras and the basement. He controls what we think we remember, what we believe is true." I looked at her, searching for the woman I married, the person who shared my dreams and fears. But all I saw was a ghost trapped behind her eyes, struggling against something invisible but suffocating. "You said you're fighting back. How?" She swallowed hard. "I've been leaving clues. The emails, the photos, the key. I hoped you'd find them. I hoped you'd want to fight too." I wanted to believe her. I needed to. But deep down, I wondered if maybe the fight had already been lost. If Ellis wasn't just a man, but an unstoppable force manipulating every thread of my existence. "Do you think I'm crazy?" I asked, voice barely audible. "No," she said quickly. "You're starting to see the cracks. That means you're waking up." I tried to focus, but my mind kept drifting. Memories flashed, snippets of conversations, moments of confusion I'd buried. Times I felt like I was watching myself from the outside, unable to intervene. Times I was sure something was wrong, but couldn't prove it. And then there was the slap. The moment she struck me on Thanksgiving, it wasn't just anger. It was fear, a desperate warning disguised as violence. I hadn't understood it then, but now it made chilling sense. Ellis's words echoed in my mind. You've been managed. Memories adjusted. Behaviors nudged. Had my wife been protecting me? Or was she part of the control system herself, a reluctant enforcer of a cruel experiment? Suddenly, the basement door creaked open again. My heart jumped. I wasn't ready, not by a long shot. But it wasn't Ellis. It was my brother, Mark. He looked at me with concern, eyes flicking between me and Rieni. Daryl? Mom's asking if you want to come upstairs. Dinner's ready. I blinked, momentarily disoriented. Dinner? He frowned. Yeah, Thanksgiving dinner. You missed the whole thing. I looked at Rieni, who gave a barely perceptible nod. I was trapped in this room, caught between memories that might be false and a present that felt like a dream. I had to choose, stay and unravel the truth, or go back to a life that might never have been mine at all. I stood up slowly, every muscle tight like a wire ready to snap. Mark was waiting, worry etched across his face, but in that moment, I wasn't sure which reality was mine anymore. The one upstairs with family and normal Thanksgiving, or this strange, locked basement full of secrets and shadows. Rieni looked at me with something raw in her eyes. Hope. Fear. A silent plea. I took a deep breath and made the hardest choice of my life. I'm coming upstairs, I said quietly. She nodded, standing beside me. The door unlocked easily this time, swinging open like it was ready to let me go. When I stepped into the warmth and light of the kitchen, my family was there. My parents, Mark, cousins, faces filled with relief and confusion. They didn't know what I'd been through. They only saw me again. But inside, I felt different. Not broken, not lost. I was waking up. In the days that followed, Rieni and I talked openly for the first time in years. We found a way to fight back, not against each other, but against the invisible chains Ellis had wrapped around us. Therapy, truth, and fierce determination became our weapons. I still get that hollow feeling sometimes, that whisper at the edge of memory. But now I have tools. I have Rieni. I have my family. And most importantly, I have myself. Ellis's control might have started the war, but I'm choosing to win the peace. Because sometimes, the darkest nights birth the brightest dawns. And this Thanksgiving, I found a new reason to be grateful.